The Subway Series began on Friday night. Juan Soto was met with plenty of boos, but the story of the game, Tylor Megill could not make it out of the third inning.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. This is the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find any of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, we all know that Friday night was about Juan Soto making his return to Yankee Stadium, and Yankees fans were ready for it. There was the signs out there about how much they dislike Soto. There was the boos that rained down every single time he stepped into the batter's box, and a lot of times, even when he was just out in the outfield, the Yankees fans in right field turned their back toward him in the ultimate petty move as Soto made his way out to the outfield. And altogether, it was just a crazy show that happened there at Yankee Stadium. It pretty much lived up to the hype. Yankees fans let Soto have it, and they'll probably continue to let Soto have it every time he comes back to Yankee Stadium. Obviously, it'll die down after this season. It won't be as bad, but he's going to be hated in that ballpark forever now, and rightfully so. But when you look at the Soto return game, we didn't really get the moment. You know, there wasn't a big-time opportunity for Soto to deliver or not deliver until literally the final out of the game, which Soto did make with a couple runners on. But once you got to that point, the Mets were so far out of it that even if Juan Soto hit a home run in the ninth inning in that spot, the Mets still would have needed another run to extend the game. So it was just a really rough one. And if you go through at-bat by at-bat, for the most part, Soto was pitched around, and he just had to take his walks. And credit him for not, getting outside of himself. There was a really funny moment that I wanted to mention too, when Soto stepped in for the first time, which was obviously the loudest chorus of boos. Soto, before he stepped in, took a step back, took off his helmet, saluted to the crowd. I thought that was a funny moment of him making light of the situation. And he really showed that it didn't faze him whatsoever, because if it did faze him and if he was trying to make them pay, he would have been swinging out of his shoes. But instead, he just kept on taking his walks. In the first inning, he took a walk, immediately stole second base. And that was kind of a little bit of a chippy moment where he got a walking lead on Carlos Rodon and just took the base on the lefty starter. Pete Alonso hits a line drive to the third baseman, Oswald Peraza, but Peraza makes a diving catch. So had that ball gotten through, maybe Soto scores a run for the Mets and the game is completely different. Instead, it is an opportunity wasted as Mark Vientos grounds out and they strand Soto in scoring position. Then the next time he comes up, leads off the fourth inning with a walk, does start a little bit of something because Vientos and Nimmo each singled behind him. Nimmo driving in Soto. Starling Marte ripped a ground ball at the middle. Unfortunately, it didn't get through. Anthony Volpe made a really good play on it to get a force out at second base. Francisco Alvarez drew a walk to load the bases for Luis Angel Acuna, but Acuna flew out and ended the threat from the Mets. So, and also, I guess I should have mentioned in between the leadoff walk from Soto and Vientos and Nimmo singling, Pete Alonso got out. So that was an opportunity the Mets maybe could have scored more, and they didn't. In the fifth inning, Soto walked with 2 outs, so not really much to do there. Seventh inning, he did get an opportunity with the runner in scoring position as Tyrone Taylor had doubled in that inning, but in that spot, he grounded out. And then the ninth inning, the Mets got a 2-out rally going. Francisco Alvarez had already drawn a walk with 1 out. Brett Batty came in to pinch hit, had a really ugly at-bat and struck out. But with 2 outs, Jeff McNeil came in, had a great at-bat, drew a walk. Francisco Lindor got Soto back up to the plate. He was in a 1-2 hole, got a changeup in the other batter's box, but just stuck his bat out, was able to get enough of it, and hit a ground ball, past the third base bag into the outfield for a very softly hit double. And that put, for one, a run in, gave the Mets their second run of the game, but also put 2 runners in scoring position for Soto to potentially extend the game and get Pete Alonso up as the tying runner. And Soto flew out. So just not a big moment. I guess there was a couple of opportunities late in the game, but at that point, the lead from the Yankees was so big that even if Soto does come through and hits a 2-run homer when Tyrone Taylor's on second base or gets a base hit in that spot, and then later, hits a 3-run homer, that would have only tied it for the Mets if both of those moments came back for Soto as, big time hits. And before that, he drew 3 walks. So I don't think there was anything that can really be said bad about Juan Soto in this game. He didn't really get his. And hopefully over the next 2 days, he'll have an opportunity to, make Yankees fans boo him a little bit more and have a moment where he drives in some big runs that puts the Mets in position to take a lead or win a game, where Yankees fans will really feel some type of way about Soto being back in the building in a Mets uniform. Otherwise, I mean, the Yankees fans that are watching this series might just be able to laugh their way home with a series win, if not a series sweep, if the Mets can't get their act together in game 2 of this series, because that game 3 is looming with Max Fried now that the Yankees got one. So the Yankees are in great position to win this first Subway Series of the season. And for Soto, he might just have to take this one on the chin. We'll see what happens. But while Soto was the headliner and Soto was supposed to be the story of the day, the real deciding factor in this game is the fact that Tylor Megill just didn't have it. And that's ultimately what happened here. He worked around traffic in the first inning, did pitch a 1-2-3 second inning, but had a miserable third inning where he just could not get out of it. Gives up 4 runs, can't even get the final out. Max Kranick has to come on in long relief to bail him out of that inning, and then Kranick stayed on and ended up giving up some runs of his own to put the Mets into a hole that they just never got out of, as it was 6-1 when she got through the 4th inning. So just a really rough game for the Mets. Megill didn't deliver. There's no other way around it. He really struggled in that inning. It was pretty brutal to watch as he just kept on walking guys after he had already given up a few runs. He just couldn't put people away. He got away from his fastball. He wasn't attacking it. Honestly looked like Tylor Megill was pitching scared in a big moment, and that doesn't necessarily bode well for his long-term future in this rotation this season, because the Mets have some starting pitchers that are coming back soon, and they're going to have to make a tough decision on this rotation. Maybe not when Paul Blackburn's ready, but certainly when Frankie Montas is ready. And if Megill continues this trend, he might be heading to Syracuse, which is wild considering how good he looked to start the season. But you just don't know if these struggles are isolated or if they're going to continue. And if they do, the Mets might have to make a tough decision. I want to talk a little bit more about what happened in this start for Megill and what's going to happen next. So we'll get to all of that in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing better than catching an MLB game live. If you're watching the Subway Series and getting a little bit of FOMO, you wanted to be there, you wanted to be part of it, you want to go today for the day game, make sure you check out Game Time, because it'll make getting tickets easier than ever. With last-minute deals, all-in pricing, and a lowest price guarantee, Game Time will take the stress out of buying MLB tickets, and ticket prices will drop as game time gets closer, meaning you could score an incredible deal. When I go to games, I wait until I'm walking into the ballpark. Then I pull open the app, I take a view at the seat map, I look at each individual seat, and you can view your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. You can buy tickets in a matter of seconds, have them sent right to your phone. It could not be easier. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button to help us get closer to our next goal of 14,000 subscribers. Now let's talk about that disastrous third inning for Tylor Megill. Gives up a leadoff single, gets a ground out that advances the runner. Then with first base open, he walks Aaron Judge. No harm in that. Okay, if first base is open, you have a runner in scoring position, you might as well just put the 4 fingers up. I'm surprised they didn't, that they actually let Megill pitch around Judge, but fine. No problem with any of that. Then to Megill's credit, he gets screwed over a little bit by some bad batted ball luck. Cody Bellinger a softly hit ground ball to Mark Vientos. He just can't make a play on it. It was hit that soft. That loads the bases. Then he completely saws off Paul Goldschmidt with a pitch that obliterates his bat, where all that was left in Goldschmidt's hands was the part of the bat that was in his hands. Everything else completely gone. But it ends up being one of those fluky balls that's hit up the middle, and by the time Lindor gets to it, it was hit so slowly that he had no hope getting Paul Goldschmidt at first. He tried to make a circus play, trying to do the spinorama and throw him out. Throws in the dirt, ends up being another throwing error for Lindor, and 2 runs come around to score off of a pick that Alonso couldn't handle. So there you go. 2 runs are in. The thing is, Megill had some opportunities to maybe pitch himself out of that jam. He gets ahead on Jason Dominguez, but he can't put him away. Walks him. Anthony Volpe hits a sac fly. Right, you got 2 outs. It's 3-0 Yankees, but you know what? You get a quick out. You get out of the inning. You still have some time left in the game. You might be able to go out there and get a 4th inning, get a 5th inning for the Mets. Help save the bullpen. What does he do? He walks Austin Wells to load the bases. Then he walks in a run. And that's when he's pulled from the game after giving up 4 runs. And he's lucky that, Max Kranick, who would give up 2 runs of his own in the next inning, was able to get a pop-up and get out of that jam. Because otherwise it could have been a much worse start for Tylor Megill. It's still bad. 2 2/3 innings pitched, 4 hits, 5 walks. He strikes out 4. Gives up the 4 runs. So really rough outing. And if you look at Megill's season, through his first 5 starts, he had a 1.09 ERA. His final start in April was that start against the Nationals where he was lights out through 6 innings. He gave up a solo homer. That was it. They sent him back out there for the 7th. He gives up a couple of hits and a run. Jose Butto comes on, gives up the inherited run. And so that's another one attributed to Megill. And then it was that disaster inning where Butto eventually gives up a 3-run homer and the Mets would lose that game late. But for Megill, that start was not a bad one, although he did give up 3 earned runs. He finished April with a 1.74 ERA. In 3 starts in May, he's got an 8.76 ERA. And he's seen his ERA climb now by 2 runs from 1.74 at the end of April to 3.74 3 starts later. And the thing about it, too, it just continues this narrative that is incorrect, that Tylor Megill always struggles after a great April. It's not true, but perception's reality. And when this has happened once before, and now it's happening again, all of a sudden Mets fans are remembering it as every single year. 2022, 2023, 2024, now 2025. Every single year, Megill looks awesome in April, and then he turns into a pumpkin after that. And it's not true. That's the crazy thing about it. Because if you look at what happened last year, Megill made 1 start in March 31st. Then he gets hurt. Didn't pitch again until the end of May. He had a bad June, only made 2 appearances in July, 1 at the end of August after Paul Blackburn got hurt, and then he finished the year with a good September. 2023, he pitched to a 3.96 ERA in April. So that wasn't a good month. And, he was bad for the rest of the year, really. 2022 was the year that everyone remembers. Fills in for Jacob deGrom on opening day as part of the combined no-hitter. He had an awesome April. But then he didn't have a horrible May. He had 1 really bad start in May where he gave up 8 runs, but he got hurt in that start. And so you don't know how much the injury played into the performance. But injuries were a big part of that season for him. It wasn't a lack of performance in May. It was he got hurt. So with all of that said, I don't think that this is as simple as, after April, he's always going to suck. I don't think that's the case. I really don't. But this is a guy where maybe the league has figured him out again, where he remade himself in the offseason in spring training, and he had a repertoire and a plan that was working, and now the league has adjusted. Honestly, though, for this particular start, it was some bad ball luck, and then he just sort of got into that mode where it was already getting away from him, and he just let it completely slip away. I still think he has good enough stuff to be a quality starting pitcher, but I also know that the Mets have better options. Frankie Montas has more upside than Tylor Megill. Sean Manaea clearly has more upside and probably a higher floor than Tylor Megill. And those guys are making their way back. Paul Blackburn will be the first one back, and he did make a start on Friday night as well in Binghamton. or I think they're on the road, but regardless, for Binghamton. He allowed 5 runs and 4 1/3, but only 3 of them were earned. Walked 1, struck out 7. Or excuse me, walked 3 and struck out 7. Got up to 75 pitches. The goal was to get him up to 75, so he basically got there. The plan now is for Blackburn to make at least one more rehab start and then reassess whether he's ready to go. The Mets are going to put him in the bullpen. They're going to put him in the rotation. What are they going to do? Here's the thing, though. Paul Blackburn's got a 6.23 ERA on his rehab tour right now. He has not been pitching very well in the minor leagues, so I don't know if he's going to come up and be better than what Megill has been or what Megill will be moving forward. So I think Megill still has some rope. I'd imagine that even when Blackburn comes up, it'll be in a bullpen capacity or as a 6th starter when they need one. And so in the meantime, I think Megill is fine. I think he's going to get a couple more turns at least to prove himself. But once Frankie Montas makes his way back, and he just faced live hitters, so he is working his way back. Once he gets on his rehab assignment, it's good to go, which could be, who knows, maybe at the end of June. There is a world where if Megill doesn't figure his act out here, that he might get sent to Syracuse when you have Montas ready to return, because him and David Peterson are the only 2 guys in this rotation that has some roster flexibility that could be optioned. And Peterson doesn't seem to be going anywhere the way he pitched last year, has continued to pitch this year. So we'll see what Megill can do from this point on. It's been a rough month, 4 earned runs in 3 starts. Not going to be the best way to continue to prove yourself and solidify yourself as a really good starting pitcher in the big leagues. It's just been a rough string. I don't know if he's as bad as he has been. I certainly think he's a lot better than this. And again, you look at that disaster of an inning. If Cody Bellinger hits the ball a little bit harder, if Paul Goldschmidt, hits the ball a little bit harder, and those turn into outs, it could be a completely different story. So he wasn't destroyed, but I think the fact that he lost his command and the body language and the way he looked in the mound, to me, it does leave some questions on, all right, what would Tylor Megill look like in a playoff start this year? Because this was a playoff atmosphere and not a home field, a playoff atmosphere on the road. And it seemed like it got in his head a little bit. So I'd be concerned about that. We'll see what's going to happen next. What I want to talk about in the final segment today is previewing Game 3 a little bit, but also, is there a chance that Max Kranick is about to get optioned? I'll tell you why that could happen in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Maybe now that the Knicks have advanced to the Eastern Conference Finals, you're going to look at the series price between the Knicks and the Pacers. Do you think the Knicks are going to win and advance to the NBA Finals? You can find all of that over at FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up, because when you head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you're an everydayer that's always tuning into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways. You get the line graphic sent to your phone each day, so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now, after Tylor Megill's rough inning, the Mets turned to Max Kranick, who did get a pop-up to get out of the bases-loaded jam in that 3rd inning, but then he got into a jam of his own in the 4th. Aaron Judge gets a 1-out single. Cody Bellinger rips a double to put 2 in scoring position for Paul Goldschmidt. Goldschmidt drives in Judge with a single of his own. Kranick then gets a ground ball to Luis Angel Acuna, but the Mets could not turn 2 on the play as Jason Dominguez was running out of the box and was able to beat it out, and the Yankees were able to score another run on the 4th out. So that was the 2 runs allowed by Kranick. To his credit, he stayed on and was able to get the bottom of the Yankees lineup out in the 5th inning. So he goes 2 1/3, only on 24 pitches. Still got out, still did his job for the most part, but he gave up a couple of runs. Jose Butto pitched two scoreless innings of relief after him to bridge the gap to the 8th inning when Daniel Nunez came on and got through a scoreless inning of relief despite the fact that he issued a 2-out walk in front of Aaron Judge, which is pretty bad. And then Judge got a base hit, but he was able to get Cody Bellinger to fly out to strand the 2 runners. So overall, the Mets were able to stay away from their top arms in the bullpen, which is good. But there is still a looming roster decision to be made here because Jose Castillo was traded for. I talked about that on yesterday's show. He's a left-handed reliever, hasn't pitched well this year, but the Mets picked him up. They DFA'd Kevin Herget to make room on the 40-man roster. But how are you making room on the active roster for a guy that is out of options? The assumption is someone has to go down, obviously, unless they're just going to DFA Castillo and hope they can pass him through waivers, which doesn't make a ton of sense to me. So if Castillo is about to join this bullpen, the Mets were just taking advantage of a sort of a grace period after making a trade before they have to add him to the active roster. Well, who is it going to be? There's 2 candidates. One is Daniel Nunez. The other is Max Kranick. Nunez has not pitched particularly well. He still doesn't look anything like the guy from last year, but he has been getting better appearance over appearance. Maybe the Mets want to keep him and see if he can build himself back up to being a late inning option for them. If they decide they want to keep Nunez, it's probably Kranick because it's not going to be Oscar Brazaban. So Kranick's most likely the guy. And you look at his performance this year, he was amazing early, but he's allowed runs in 6 of his last 10 appearances and 7 of his last 12. His ERA across his last 12 appearances has gone from 0 to 4. So that is where he's at right now. It has been a little bit of a struggle. I still think Kranick's going to be a big part of this team, but he does have the flexibility to be optioned down. If the Mets are looking to add a second lefty to their bullpen for this series, and they did make this trade for Jose Castillo, I would not be stunned if it was Kranick that goes down, but it could also be Nunez as well. Those are the 2 guys with options that would make sense. That's assuming that Castillo is going to be added to this active roster. Otherwise, I don't know why you make the trade to just DFA him and try to pass him through waivers. We'll see what happens with all of that. Let's talk about this game today. It is a day game. The Mets have Griffin Canning on the mound. So can Canning go up against this tough Yankees lineup and have better results than Tylor Megill did? The Mets are desperate for him too because, again, Sunday you got Max Fried looming. So this is the game to win so that you can hope that you will take the best punch from the Yankees ace on Sunday and find your way to a victory. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to get back in this series. This is the game you obviously need to have. It's a must win for this series, obviously, because you're going to lose the series if you don't win the game. But also, I just can't imagine the Mets losing this game and then winning on Sunday against Max Fried. It feels like if you lose this game, you're going to get swept and you're going to get embarrassed at Yankee Stadium. And Yankees fans are going to really get the last laugh then. So this is a very important game for the Mets. We'll see how Canning fares against this tough Yankees lineup. I'd imagine that you're going to see Jeff McNeil and Brett Batty in there with a righty on the mound, especially because there'll be a lefty in the final game of this series. I would think it's going to be McNeil at second, Batty at third, Vientos at DH. There is a chance that if they want to keep Acuna in the lineup, they could have McNeil in center and Acuna at second with that same alignment of Batty at third, Vientos at DH. But I am excited to see Jeff McNeil in the lineup for this game because I just think it's a good ballpark for him to play in for one because it's got the short porch that he can definitely take advantage of. But also, I just think that some of the at-bats the Mets were getting from the middle to the back end of their lineup just weren't great. I think Jeff McNeil would give them a much better at-bat than what we were seeing from the likes of Luis Angel Acuna and Tyrone Taylor at the end of that lineup. So we'll see. We'll see how the Mets decide to line things up. And I'm also really curious to see how Brett Batty does because his at-bat, his pinch hitting at-bat in the 9th inning was ugly. It was the first really uncompetitive at-bat that I feel like we've seen since Batty came back where he just went fishing. Went fishing on 0-1 on a pitch that was just below the zone, tough for one to take, but still one that you have to take to be in an even count. Then he was an 0-2 hole, and he chased a pitch that pretty much hit the plate. I mean, it was so far out of the zone. It just had an ugly swing on it. So we'll see if this is a moment that's too big for Brett Batty, the way it sort of seemed like it was for Tylor Megill. But I do want to see him get out there and just get a look at, how Batty performs in a series like this, especially with this being the one game where a righty's on the mound. because you never know. Maybe Brett Batty is able to pull one down the right field line, hit a home run, and continue this hot streak. He also could go out there and strike out 3 times and look like a disaster because he's feeling the pressure of that big game. And then that would give me a lot of concerns about just long term. Is this the type of guy that can figure things out and can be a real contributor at the big league level? Or is he always going to be a guy that's going to struggle with that third deck effect where in a big league game, he just can't quite figure it out? It'll be interesting to see how Batty does, how McNeil does. Will Canning be able to hold up and continue his great string of pitching so far this season? We talked about it going into the series on yesterday's show. If these games turn into a slugfest, the Yankees have a huge edge. The way the Mets win this game and win this series is by keeping it close early and then turning it on against the Yankees bullpen. And luckily, they forced the Yankees into using a lot of their guys. Devin Williams pitched. Not great, still pitched. And then you had Luke Weaver come on. And Weaver, while he only got one guy out and only faced that one batter, it was still good for the rest of the series. The Mets were able to get him into the game. So it's a big credit to the lineup in the 9th inning for extending things and turning it into something that should hopefully impact tomorrow and give the Mets a little bit of an edge as they try to claw their way back into this series. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. Really appreciate all of you for tuning in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or first watch every day, not for your second watch. Head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel. It covers everything in the world of sports. I'm talking about Locked On Sports Today. There are local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.